Our story begins in the small town of Watkins, a farming community in central Minnesota best known for its award-winning butter and being the birthplace of Senator Eugene McCarthy. But on May 19, 1932, another important resident was born. In the small home on Meeker Avenue, Kelly and Roland Ley welcomed the birth of their fourth child and first boy, Roland Gerald Ley. It was a traditional German community where rules and structure were highly valued, and the Ley family had a lot of responsibility. Norb ran the local bank with his brother. But Roland found plenty of time for fun and a little mischief. It certainly helped to have three older sisters, Cleo, Lois, and Rita, to spoil him rotten. Summers were spent swimming or fishing in nearby Clear Lake, shooting squirrels, roller skating, or just hanging out in the town park near the railroad tracks. Winters were a bit tougher, with blizzards and freezing temperatures. Sledding or skating were fun, but a lot more time was spent indoors playing games with family and friends. Although the Depression was in full swing, it didn't matter much to a young boy growing up in a small town. Times were tough, but they were all in it together. Roland attended grade school at St. Anthony's, and did so well he skipped the second grade. He attended Mass next door, all in Latin. When he was 9 years old, World War II started, and Roland stayed glued to the radio, listening for the latest news. Soon Roland entered Kimball High School, where he played on all the sports teams, tried his hand at the school play, and got elected student council president. In the summer, he kept himself busy working on the local farms, driving a milk truck, and working at the Kraft cheese plant in Watkins. Later, he transferred to high school at St. Boniface in Cold Spring, and then moved on to St. John's University in nearby St. Cloud, Minnesota, where he studied pre-pharmacy and sang in the choir. Times changed when Roland's Uncle Ray died, and things became hard to manage at the Watkins Bank. Roland changed his study to business administration with thoughts of working at the bank after graduation. During his sophomore year, on a trip to Cold Spring, Roland first met Sandy Tyson. He was immediately smitten, and it didn't take long for him to ask Sandy out on a date. They continued dating and seeing each other as frequently as possible, even though they were often separated by a number of miles. Roland continued his studies, and Sandy went to work in Minneapolis. Soon the Korean War broke out, and Roland volunteered for the Army. He spent time in Kansas, Georgia, and Texas before working his way into the military police in New Orleans. He spent the rest of his enlisted time there. While on leave over the holidays, he asked Sandy to marry him, and she said yes. This dynamic team of two had a fun wedding back in Cold Spring, then drove out to Glacier National Park for a honeymoon. Then they headed to Chicago, where Roland enrolled in business school and Sandy went to work in Honeywell. They lived in a humble basement apartment owned by Betty and Ray Youngstrom. Roland had to speed up his studies when Sandy became pregnant with their first child. Stephen was born in June 1956. Soon, Roland graduated and got a position at Arthur Young & Company. He spent those first years doing audits and traveling to various accounting clients throughout the Midwest. Somewhere amidst travels back and forth to Minnesota, Roland and Sandy found time to get busy with a new project. Thomas Ley was born in September 1958. The house was getting crowded and they moved to a bigger apartment just down the street. Roland passed his CPA exam, and the auditing work at Arthur Young continued. Soon the Young family moved to a new house in Arlington Heights, Illinois. It was only 1,250 square feet, but must have seemed like a palace at the time. The neighborhood was filled with young couples, all starting their families and careers. It was the start of the 60s, and suburban life was in its heyday. It didn't take long for the family to keep growing. Little Catherine Ley was born in April 1960, helping to fill up the new house and bring some balance to all those boys. Around this time, Roland discovered his favorite libation, the perfect CC Manhattan, on the rocks with a twist and an olive. He also got involved in politics, getting elected to precinct captain for the local Republican Party. But there was still plenty of time for family matters. The next addition, Roland Ley, was born in September 1962. The new house was getting a little crowded, so they converted the garage into an extra family room. Roland was promoted to manager at Arthur Young and continued on the auditing trail, now handling more clients and working longer and later hours. The family joined St. James Parish and the kids went to Wellston School. Roland joined the Elks Club, the Illinois CPA Society, and Toastmasters. He was busy. Sandy was busy too, with 4 young children. Still, they managed to spend time together, and the result was child number 5. Patricia Ley was born in September 1964. Roland was soon promoted to principal at Arthur Young. The family was busy with Little League school and just maintaining their sanity in that small house on Walnut Street. Pretty soon it became clear that a bigger house would be a great idea. The family moved to 1519 North Hickory in 1967. This was another new neighborhood, but a lot of their old friends made a similar move, so there were many familiar faces on the street. In 1968, the family was long overdue for a vacation, so they all piled into the family station wagon and headed to California. Despite the car overheating in the desert, it was a successful and memorable trip with visits to Colorado, Arizona, and many points in California. Back in Chicago, Roland was promoted again to partner in Arthur Young. Although it still meant long hours at the office, the pay was better and the work more rewarding. Roland took on new clients like Massey Ferguson and Wrigley and joined the local country club, Roland Green. By this time, the family had experimented with children for some time and decided to finally get it right with the addition of Jonathan in August 1970. Outside of work, Roland got involved with the Better Government Association, and the family took another trip to Washington, D.C. Work took Roland overseas for the first time to Europe in 1974. The family continued to grow up. Before long, the boys had graduated St. Viator High School and were on to college. Steve went to Notre Dame and Tom to Marquette. As the kids were leaving home, Roland and Sandy had a little more time for themselves and took vacations to Arizona, Mexico, and Hawaii for their 25th anniversary. The family took a houseboat trip to the Boundary Waters area in Minnesota in 1978. Kathy soon followed Tom to Marquette, and Karen went to Minnesota. The family was now just 4, with Patricia and Jonathan still at home. They took more family vacations, like a drive to Niagara Falls, a skiing vacation to Colorado, and a drive back to Glacier National Park in Montana. Pretty soon, Patricia was off to college at Marquette as well, and Kathy married her longtime boyfriend Russ. The other kids didn't take long to follow suit, as Tom married Margie, Steve married Suzanne, and Karen married Adam. All started with their own families soon enough, and the grandkids began to multiply. One more big family vacation was taken in 1987 to Cancun, Mexico. It was harder to get everyone together, but it still happened somehow, and everyone had a great time. The immediate family might have been shrinking, but to accommodate all the grandkids, Roland, Sandy, and Jonathan moved to a bigger house in Palatine, Illinois. Many holidays and special occasions filled the house with a joyful ruckus. Jonathan finally left the house for college in 1988. Now, Roland and Sandy had all the time they wanted for themselves. They took more trips, going to Europe with friends, and a family reunion in Las Vegas, and many other destinations. Patricia settled in California and married Charlie Hoyt. Jonathan graduated and joined them on the West Coast. The family was growing and spreading across the country. Arthur Young merged and became Ernst & Young, where Roland worked a few more years until retiring in 1992. Retirement for Roland and Sandy meant more time and finally an end to those late nights at the office. Roland had more time to hone his golf game, and they both had more time to travel. On to Greece, Las Vegas, a cruise to the Far East, and more. Roland kept busy with stints as the president of Rolling Green, on the board of directors at Lab Savings and Loan, at the nonprofit Hope Now, and various other committees and associations. Retirement also meant not having to suffer through those long, cold Chicago winters, as Roland and Sandy spent the colder months in Arizona, finally buying their first house there in 2000. In 2007, Jonathan became the last child to marry, finding his sweetheart Nancy in Oregon. And this story keeps being written. Now Roland has reached his 80th year, 80 years filled with work, family, travels, community, and fun. The family continues to grow with children and grandchildren pursuing their lives and careers and making stories of their own throughout the world. So happy birthday to Roland and congratulations on 80 memorable years.